Well, good evening and welcome to our webinar this week that is entitled Getting Started in Gaining a Familiarity. And the purpose of this webinar is to focus on it's kind of some best practices for week one, and then also just introducing you to both the learning community and the learning management system. So as we begin, we're going to take a look at the learning community, and if you're not familiar with it, I'd encourage you to join us. And you can access learning community by visiting my.snu.edu. Click on SNU Connect, then click on Finding a Learning Community or Lounge, and then you will select MA History Undergraduate Learning Groups. And as you'll see on the my.snu page, there are a couple in which you can select from. So you want to make sure that you are looking for that MA History. And the learning community is a great resource. It's a place where discussion can occur, announcements, as I mentioned, resources can be posted related to both course content and then also basically information what's also occurring within the discipline of history itself. And there's going to be podcasts that have been shared throughout the past and they'll continue to be shared, that will consist of faculty interviews and some interviews in which that occur for graduates of the program. They kind of share their stories and where they've been and how they've accomplished what they have, including making their way through their PhD program. Just a number of resources and interesting information that is available for you to utilize and access as you work your way throughout the overall program. Now, once you get to that MA History page, you will see this is a screenshot from what you will see when you access that page. And you can see there's a number of buttons down the left-hand side, the History Commons, resources, recorded webinars, instructor bios, and whatnot. I want to draw your attention to the resources page. In that second tab there on the left-hand side, when you click on that tab, it will take you to a page that looks like this. And this is the History Department webpage. A lot of resources on here that are also located there for you as well, and they are consistently updated. So it's a page that you'll want to check out often and frequently so that you can have the latest and greatest information that's happening while also having access to, as I mentioned, those resources that are made available that do include links to some primary source repositories, some different YouTube videos that are available for you to utilize, and just a whole host of resources that can assist you as you move forward in the overall program and obtaining those skills that are needed for the historian to function within the discipline. So definitely check that out. As I mentioned, that learning community is a nice hub of information. So definitely take a few minutes, visit there, become active, follow the feed, and then you can also participate in those discussions that occur. We do have a new learning management system that we will be utilizing this term and going forward. And this is a screenshot of what you will see when you log into Brightspace, which is located at learn.snhu.edu. And once you log in, you will see this particular page here. This is the home page. I'll call it the landing page for that Brightspace, and it is a really, really nice learning management system. So as I mentioned, when you log in, this is the page that you will see, and you can also notice right down here that when you're looking for your courses, you do want to look at what I'll call a waffle. They call it the course. Select a course icon in the navigation, which that is located right up here. So when you click on that, you will see a drop-down menu that will appear, and you will select your particular course that you're trying to access. One of the nice things about this particular landing page is the fact that there's a lot of information that's contained on it. For example, you see the advising and the Career Center links, just a whole host of really good information for you to go ahead and access. But when you click on that select a course icon, you click on that, you will then be taken to your course, whichever you are enrolled in and that you have selected. And this is just a couple different shots that you will see when you click on that particular course. And as you can see here, this just happens to be HIS 502. So, when you click on your course, you're going to see all the information related to that course and different modules and all that. I want to focus on this course menu tab. that is located right here. When you select that drop down arrow right there, you will then see this information appear over here. And this is really what I'll call the kind of the hub of the course, because from this course menu, you can select all these different areas in which you want to go. The announcements, the learning modules, the discussions, any assignments, and even the grades. So a lot of good information in here that you will want to go ahead and access as well, because this is where your course occurs. When we think about the announcements, for example, anything that's been updated, posted by your instructor, could be the weekly announcements that'll appear every Monday morning. It could be a midweek announcement related to, maybe a discussion that's occurring, a special resource that's been posted, could be a learning community announcement. Whatever the case may be is going to appear in there. Learning modules are you're going to have a module for each week of the course. And the purpose behind the modules is to really focus on all the material you need for that particular week. You'll have your plan at a glance. It'll be included in that learning module. You will have all the readings that'll take place, all the assignments. You'll be able to link right to the discussion board. If there's a milestone or a journal or whatever the case may be that's going to be due that week is going to be linked right into that learning module. So, each week, as I mentioned, we'll have a module. And one of the nice things about Brightspace is, on the home page that you also see here is it will give you your progress as you've looked at and reviewed all that information within the module. So obviously we want to make sure we're looking at everything in the module, taking advantage of everything that's there, the resources, whether it's a required reading or an optional reading. Do keep in mind that they are provided for your benefit. So the more resources that you access throughout the week, the better prepared you will be to participate both in the discussion board and submit any assignments that may be due. So definitely keep that in mind with the purpose of learning modules and the vital information it is located within that module as well. As I mentioned, we also have a link that will take you straight to the discussion board, any type of assignments, and also the grade link. So a lot of good information right here in the course menu, and this is just really a great way to what I'll call shortcuts to all these different areas that you can view and utilize within your course. Do want to focus on a couple key deadlines to remember that are consistent across the university. Each module begins on a Monday. So when we talk about those learning modules that are in place and located within Brightspace, they will all begin on a Monday morning. So that's when you will want to go ahead and access that information. Your initial discussion response is due by Thursday evening of each week at 11:59 within your time zone for weeks 2 through 10. We do have an engagement requirement within a discussion board, and that is to make a post on 2 classmates' discussions posts throughout the week, and those 2 classmates posts must be made by Sunday evening at 11:59 p.m. within your time zone, and that is also for weeks 2 through 10. All course assignments within the course are due by Sunday evening at 11:59 p.m. within your time zone for weeks 2 through 10. Now, one of the things I do want to highlight is the fact that I have made a consistent reference to weeks 2 through 10 up to this point. And the reason for that is the discussion requirement and assignment requirement for week 1 does differ. All assignment deadlines for week 1 are due by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that is because of the SNHU participation policy. So for week 1, which we are currently in, you will want to make sure that you have your discussion board post made, you've engaged with 2 classmates, and any assignments all submitted by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the participation requirements, and that is standard across the university. Very important to note the differences between week 1 and then the requirements for weeks 2 through 10, as they do differ related to Eastern Standard Time and your time zone. Now, I also wanted to provide a sample weekly schedule for you just to kind of provide an idea regarding how should I approach my week? What should my week look like as it relates to everything I have to do? Well, as we talked about just a few minutes ago, each module will begin on a Monday. So that means starting on Monday, you will want to go ahead and begin to focus on the coursework that is due for that particular week. And you are going to have 10 modules because each graduate course is 10 weeks. And those 10 weeks will move by very, very quickly. So we do want to make sure, that you have some element of organization related to your overall approach to the course, because you don't want to wait till Thursday to start thinking about your initial discussion board post, because that's obviously not going to give you enough time to complete that well-developed post to address the each aspect of the question and make sure that you have supported all the ideas presented. And you also don't want to wait till Sunday to begin to think about the assignment that's due that evening. So what I've kind of done here is broken it down to the way in which you could approach the differing readings for the week. Could be a reading per day. You're starting to work on your discussion board initial post and comments to your classmates. And the same is going to be true Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Now, maybe you don't have 4 readings. Maybe you only have 2 readings, which means maybe you've made your initial post by Tuesday. And that is wonderful because the earlier you make your initial post to discussion board allows additional engagement to occur. And we want to keep in mind that the discussion board is where the course occurs. That's where you're going to engage with your classmates. That's where your instructor is going to engage with you, and you're going to engage with the instructor. So the earlier you post, the better you'll be. And again, by Thursday at 11:59 p.m., that discussion board initial post will be made. Then come Friday and Saturday, you can start to work on, milestones, short papers, journals, whatever the case may be. And this does not suggest that you should wait until Friday to complete this because, as you think about your readings for the week, there's going to be a lot of overlap between the readings for the assignments as it relates to the discussion board and how those readings can then carry over into some of your other work as well. And we also want to keep in mind that if you're working on a milestone or maybe it's your final project, whatever the case may be, there's going to be outside readings as well. So you can start to see and get an idea of why an aspect of organization is ultimately required as you approach each week, because you want to make sure that you are meeting all of your deadlines, because by Sunday night again, those discussion board comments, that's the engagement on your classmates' post, maybe your instructor followed up with you or whatever the case may be, but that is all due by Sunday night, along with any particular assignments, whether it's a milestone, short paper, journal, whatever the case may be, because come Monday, you're going to be facing a new module. And discussion boards obviously cannot be made up as part of the SNHU late policy. So keep that in mind as well as you approach your week. But the key element to focus on is to make sure that you are organized, like I mentioned, and have a system that works for you and is in place for you as well. And if you ever have any questions on, any of the readings or anything like that you're encountering throughout the week as you're working through them to, focus on the discussion board post or an assignment, whatever the case may be, and you need clarification, don't hesitate to reach out to your instructor because they are always more than happy to help as well. A couple things to keep in mind as you approach the discussion board is, first of all, the deadlines. That initial post by Thursday night, and then those posts to your classmates for engagement by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. You want to make sure that your initial post addresses all aspects of the question. A lot of times these discussion questions are involved. They might have 2 or 3 questions that ask you to analyze various factors and address differing areas. And it's very, very important to make sure that you do address all aspects of the question. That's going to be directly related to the rubric, which we'll talk about in a second. You also want to make sure as you're addressing all aspects of the question that you draw specific examples from the readings. The readings are very, very important to utilize within the discussion post because we want to keep in mind that the discussion board posts are not opinions. They do need to be supported by course material. Maybe you've done some outside research to support the ideas that are presented, but it's very important to focus on the idea of supporting the ideas and incorporating those concepts that are being addressed throughout the week as it relates to your overall work within the course. You also want to maintain a professional tone. One of the things that's very important to focus on in the online learning environment is the fact that we are writing everything. There's a tone that can sometimes be conveyed within writing. It's very important to make sure that we maintain a professional tone, that we maintain what's called proper netiquette, because the written word is very, very important, and that's all we have to go on. So make sure that you do maintain a professional tone within your writing, within your discussion board posts, within your engagement with your classmates. You want to make sure that you are, focused on and really just focusing on the course content as it relates to engaging and sharing differing ideas, but also in a respectful manner. It's very important to know. I also want to reference the idea that we talk about maintaining a professional tone is the fact that these are not formal essays, but they should be coherent and polished. Again, it's academic writing. And the writing process is something that is always ongoing. It's never complete. We're always seeking to improve the way in which we write, and a discussion board should not be any different from that at all. You also want to use the rubric as a guide. It's very important to know what the rubric is asking for as it relates to, whether it's content, comprehension, critical thinking ideas, whatever the case may be, but also make sure that, you have, if you've cited material, you're going to want to use footnotes and have that bibliographic citation at the bottom of your discussion board posting. All those ideas are very, very important to the discussion board post, and they are noted on the rubric. And the rubric should always be our guide, regardless of whatever the assignment is, because the rubric is what your instructor is going to use as they grade your work. So you have the ability to utilize the rubric as you're working on the assignment, which your instructor then will utilize the rubric as they're grading your assignment. So not a lot of surprises there as it relates to the rubric requirements, because you have them and the instructor has them. So everybody knows exactly what is required of them. Writing style, we want to keep in mind as you make your way throughout the term and also your work in the discipline, is the fact that we in history do utilize what's known as the Chicago manual style or the Turabian style. You can hear Chicago and Turabian used interchangeably, and the purpose for that is the manual for writers that you're looking at on your screen is written by Kate L. Turabian. This is the abbreviated version of the Chicago style. Okay, so if your instructor talks about Turabian, maybe you'll have another instructor that'll talk about Chicago. They are talking about the exact same writing method. I always encourage students to have a desk copy of Turabian's Manual for Writers. It is a great resource, and it is something that you will utilize each and every day you are working within the discipline. It's very, very important to have on hand, because you will need to know exactly how you need to format citations. And the nice thing about Turabian, there are examples in there, not only of bibliographic citations, footnotes, or whatever the case may be. There's also sample cover pages. There are samples for differing footnotes that you might need to utilize based upon your source, whatever the case may be. But Turabian is a great desk reference to have for you, and you will definitely utilize it. So keep that in mind. When we talk about Turabian, as I mentioned, it is the only format we do utilize within history. We do not use APA or any other citation format, and you will want to make sure that you develop a knowledge of this format early on. It's going to serve you well in the long run. And one of the things, if this is your first term, very first course, Turabian might be new to you. It might have been a few years since you've been in the undergraduate classroom, or maybe it wasn't even something that was heavily focused on in your undergraduate degree. That now changes. Turabian is very, very important to use. Develop that knowledge of this format early on, and as you work your way throughout the program, Turabian will become more and more intense. So, when your instructor is giving you that feedback related to Turabian, make sure you definitely take that to heart, because it is something that you are going to need to know how to do. A couple key chapters that I would highlight in Turabian that can be beneficial to you. Chapters 15 through 19 does cover citations. And as I referenced a few moments ago, there are samples of many different sources that you might need to cite within Turabian. Books with 2 or 3 authors, how to cite a public document, how to cite, differing source materials related to actual artifacts, whatever the case may be. It's a great resource for you to utilize. And also, as I mentioned, a lot of samples in there to guide you as well. So writing style is very, very important. I cannot emphasize the importance of the Turabian book enough, because you will utilize it. Citations, as we continue to talk about Turabian, as I just referenced, chapters 15 through 19 are very important. We do want to make sure that you cite any material that's not yours. We never want to put integrity in question. And in history, we do utilize footnotes rather than endnotes, because they are easier to follow. And footnotes are also addressed in Turabian as well. So definitely make sure that you are utilizing footnotes. And also keep in mind that citations show your work. They show that research has been conducted. And as I say, we don't want to put integrity in question. We want to make sure that your research is noted as well. So you will demonstrate that through citations and making sure that they are present when needed. Do keep in mind that citations should also be used in a discussion board and in a formal writing assignment, such as a paper. When a citation is used, a bibliography needs to accompany the work. And if you have any questions on the requirements for papers and specific instructor requirements, do reach out to your instructor because they can add some clarification for you on that as well. Now, one of the things I do want to address when we talk about a bibliography page, as I just mentioned, should be included with all assignments when material is cited, and do visit with the instructor as well regarding their requirements. But also double check the requirements listed on the rubric, because it very well could be spelled out for you on the rubric. And remember, that is your guide, just as it's the instructor's guide for grading your work. One of the things I do want to note is the differing formats that are present for footnotes and bibliographic citations. They are different. So when we talk about the need to utilize a bibliography when you have footnotes present, you don't want to just copy your footnotes right onto the bibliography page, because they are going to differ in format. So you will need to consult Turabian to make sure that you've formatted both the footnotes and the bibliographic citation in correct format. Very, very important to remember and keep in mind. One other element I did want to address, just to kind of give you kind of a key pointer that will assist you as you work your way through your first course and ultimately the entire program, is a Microsoft Word feature that you do have to adjust manually. When we take a look at the rubrics, for all the written assignments, you will note that it says all assignments should be formatted in a Times New Roman 12-point font. Well, in Microsoft Word, they do not automatically default to a Times New Roman font. You have to select that yourself. Before you select the font, I always encourage students to go over here and select no spacing. Obviously, you're going to double space all your assignments, so when you select no spacing, this will make sure that you are starting on a clean slate. Once you select no spacing, you can then go over here and select Times New Roman as your font. Make sure you do have the 12-point font also selected. Now, this does differ for footnotes. Footnotes need to be formatted in a Times New Roman 10-point font. So when you utilize Microsoft Word to insert your footnotes, it's going to default to a different font again. So you will then have to initially select the Times New Roman, change the font size to 10-point font right here, and then you will be good to go. Generally, you only have to do this the very first time, and then the formatting will hold within Microsoft Word. But I only highlight that because the rubric does state that all assignments need to be submitted in that Times New Roman 12-point font, which is directly related to the importance of checking the rubric to make sure that you are meeting all of the assignment requirements prior to submitting that assignment. So just a little pointer there that'll help you out as you work your way through each course that you have. With that said, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to attend and view this webinar. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact your instructor or post your question in the learning community. We are more than happy to assist.